Hi guys, this is Sai Kumar Kortiwada. In this video, we will learn about validating a form group using form controls. In this video, we will learn completely about the validation of a form group. In my previous video, I have explained how to access a form control using a form group. So here, let me quickly jump into Visual Studio Code. Here, I have created a project, and inside this project, I have app component. Inside the app component, we have something like app.module.ts. To use any forms module, we need to import a forms module or reactive forms module. For now, I am using reactive form modules. So I have imported the reactive form modules, and here the server is already running. And let me go to the HTML part. Let me create few HTML content now. So for example, I am creating a form, and inside the form I have an input field with a placeholder as username, and let me create a break statement and also a break statement, and let me create input field of another placeholder. So let me give placeholder is equal to password and slash. Let me break this and also break this. So now I have a button type is equal to button, and also let me write login or submit, something like this button. I have saved this. Let me see the output of this. Go here, let me reload. Here we got username and the password. Let me zoom a bit. So now what I want to do is I want to create a form group. Let me go to the component.ts and let me create a form group here. So let me define my form group name like login form group colon. It's a type of form group. And then let me create a constructor, and inside this constructor, let me write this dot login form group is equal to new form group of, it will take an object. So inside the object, let me give username as our form control. So let me create a form control with a username as empty comma, and also let me give a password and new form control. So this is my password empty by default. So let me inject this username and password in my HTML content. So here I can write something like form group. Form group is a directive which will take a form group. So my form group is login form group. Let me copy this login form group, go to the HTML, paste here, and let me define my form control names. Form control name is equal to username, the first form control name, and the password for second form control name. Form control name is equal to password. So I have defined these form control names here, username and the password. And what I want to do is on submit, I want to have a click event to know about the event emitters and event management in Angular. Please watch my event binding tutorial video for better understanding. So let me write a method called as login. So let me copy this login and go to my TS file, and then here we can write console.logof this dot login form dot value. So this will give the value, and let me save this, go back here. Now what I'll do is go to the inspect, and whenever I enter some value in this field and click on the submit, then I have to see the value here is as an object like username and the password. So Sai Kumar @gmail.com, and password, let me give the password 123456 7. So let me click on submit. So here we got username and the password. So my binding is working as expected. But here one case is I can log in only when I have username and the password. Let me remove this password even though I'm able to submit, and here the password is empty. That means we are not validating the form. In this, what we will do is we will try to validate both username and the password via one validation called as required validators. There is a method called as validators dot compose of, I can give a set of validations to this. So let me give an array and validators dot required. My first validation is required validation, and go here, let me give validators dot compose of validators dot required. Already we saw about the validation of a form control in my form control video. The same pattern we will be following here, but the accessing of this username form controls will be a bit different in this case. So let me write one division, and inside this div I want to check whether my form control have the errors or not. So ngf is equal to whenever my form control has been touched. That means I want to get from my form control from my form group. So login form group dot get of, I can use username dot touched, whether this is touched or not. Already we know this is a form control. Till here we are getting the form control, and remaining stuff whatever we are using, that is equivalent to our form control validation part. So let me give one is touched, or same pattern, I can use the same pattern and it should be something like dirty. So let me give dirty, and then let me hit enter. Form group dot get of username, and first it should check the invalid or not. If it is invalid, and it should be either touched or it should be something like dirty. So then in this case we will get the errors inside our span tag. Let me use star ng if login group. I have login group dot get of username, and for this username I may be getting an errors, and inside the errors let me check required, because we are using only required validation. So in this case we should show username is required, and let me save this. And also the same pattern I can use for my input element. So here I can paste here, and let me pass the password, and here also password, and then here also password, here also password. But in this case what the error we are getting is, here errors is object is possibly null. Why? Because the errors object is checking if the username exists only, then we can check the error. So in this case what we are doing is we are checking the errors. If the username does not exist, then the errors may be possibly null. So in that case what we can do is we can use a question mark, and here also we can use a question mark. Let me save this. Okay, so now let me check the dirty property as well. Even the dirty property also exists only when I have username. So I can use an optional check with a question mark. If the value exists, then check the invalid. If the value exists, then check the invalid, and dirty and touched. Let me save this. Now I have saved all this, compiled successfully. Go back now, clear it off. Let me touch this and come out. You can see username is required. Let me touch here and come out. Username is required, but we should get a password is required. So let me change this label as password is required. Let me save this, go back, clear it off, and let me touch here, go out, touch here and go out. So here in this case we got password required and username is required. But here if you see the code, it's bit clumsy. Let me format it. Okay, and in this format what we are checking is we are checking each and every login form and the errors. So instead of doing all this stuff, let me write one method where login form dot get will be common but username will be different. That will be passed as a parameter to my method. So let me create a method. Get form control is my method which will accept one form control. That means form control name colon, it's a type of string, and then this will be returning that particular string value. So here in this case I can write return this dot login form group dot get of, I want to pass this form control name. Let me paste here and save this. Okay, now let me use this get form control instead of using all this login form control dot get of something. Okay, so instead of using all this get, I can copy paste and replace with my get form control name, paste here and go here. Now you can see get form control of username, and when the username is passed, this will return you. If my login form group is having something, then it will return the form control name, but it should not be in a string format because this value will be dynamic. Let me save this. Now go back and check the output. Let me click here and click here. It works the same. So now what I want to do is I'm validating individual form controls, but in my case I want to validate even a form group. So here how to validate it, I'll show you something in the console.log of this dot login form group dot invalid or valid. We can say valid or invalid. Let me give valid. So Vice versa, valid will be an opposite to your invalid. So let me go back, clear it off, and touch here, come out, touch here, come out. You have username and the password. Now let me click this. My form is false. Why? Because both the required validations has not been fulfilled. Let me clear it off, reload, and let me give a username as sai@gmail.com, and then let me not give the password. So now the password is in required state. Let me click here. If you see here, I'm getting false. That means I'm not able to see the message, but I'm getting the false. In this case, what we want to do is I want to disable this login/submit button whenever my fields are my form is invalid. So in this case, I can use a disable functionality over my button. So let me use a disabled functionality over my button, but this is a dynamic disability. So let me use a property binding. To know more about property binding, you can watch my tutorials for property binding for better understanding. So in this case, I want to check my login form group dot invalid. If the form group is invalid, then I want to disable the whole button. So in this case, the first time it is disabled, let me enter some values i@gmail.com and 12345 6 as a password. And if you see here, it is enabled, and let me remove this, it was disabled, and let me give 12345. Now it was enabled, but the small mistake what we are doing is it's a password, so it should be something in the stars. So let me give type as password. Save this, go back, clear it off, and then use sai kumar@gmail.com. So it's a valid 12345, and now you are enabling it, and let me remove this. So this has not been showing. That means password is required and the button is disabled. So this is how we can validate our form controls inside a form group. And one more thing, we are using a click event. Instead of click event, Angular is also providing one more event called as ng-submit. So you can use ng-submit over your form group. And let me write ng-submit over this. Instead of using a click event, I can remove this click event and I can write ng-submit. So on the form we can write ng-submit, and here what I want to do is I want to call the login functionality, and I want to change this button to submit. Why we are changing into submit, I'll show you. So here whenever our type is submit, then whenever this particular button is clicked, then this particular login method will be called, and that will be consoling these two statements. Let me go back, clear it off. Let me give sai@gmail.com and 12345. Let me click on here. So you will be getting a username as password, and the validation is true. That means form is valid. But if we are giving the type as button, let me go here and let me try to give button. In this case, the button will be treated as normal button. It will never trigger your ng-submit. So to remember, ng-submit is a method which will be invoked inside a form whose button type is submit. So let me go back, clear it off, and type something here 12345 and click on submit. So you are not seeing this console. Why? Because now my ng submit is not triggered. By this we can understand we can trigger ng submit only when the button is in submit mode. So always remember, whenever you are using a form and you have a ng submit, then always recommended to use only one submit button. We should not use two or more submit buttons. If you are using two or more submit buttons, whatever the button you are triggering, it will trigger ng submit. So this is how ng submit, login form group, and your form controls with the validations will work. Hope you like my explanation. If you like my video, like, share, subscribe to my channel for more updates. Signing off. Thank you.